Before we begin, thank you very much to Maverick Jack for joining my Patreon campaign over at patreon.com/TJOmega. Thank you guys so much for all the help you have given me and for everything you continue to do, whether it's hitting like and subscribe because that helps a lot too, or pitching into the Patreon. All of it keeps the channel alive and lets me continue to get away with this. So thank you guys so much. This one is pretty simple. I'm not going to do a whole lot of editing to it. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail here. This is just something that was on my mind. And I talked about this on stream once upon a time, and a lot of people responded really well to it. So I thought, let me just commit this to video, just so it's out in the universe in some permanent fashion. And let's just see what other people think. Because this idea is not fully fleshed out, but I do think there's enough there that you can kind of see where I was going with this. So the challenge was, how do you adapt Kamen Rider to an American audience? Because they've done it twice. They did Masked Rider in the 90s, which was attempting to make it a more childish take on Power Rangers, and nobody liked it. Kind of a failure all the way around. So yeah, that didn't really take off. And then they did Kamen Rider Dragon Knight. So hey, we got to actually use the name Kamen Rider in America. Now, a lot of people liked that show. Personally, I felt it was way too convoluted with what they were doing. They liked the Ryuga suit better, so I had to get used to the hero in the black suit later in the series. They had the idea of, we want to sell all the action figures, because the whole reason they picked Ryuki in the first place was because there were so many action figures they could make from it. You're talking 13 riders, 2 super forms, all the contract monsters, the human forms. Like, they were in heaven. That doesn't even cover Monsters of the Week. So they decided Ryuki. But that also meant they had to make the different riders appealing, because most of them in Ryuki appear as villains when they first show up. At least antagonistic. So, because it's basically Kamen Rider Highlander, right? So the show's solution to this was to reintroduce all the characters in like mirrored good guy versions of them. So now I had like twice, the cast is like suddenly twice the size, and I have to like, I'm being told I have to care about all these new guys that came in, even though they're basically all new characters. I don't like that. I don't like little things like that. It was. No, I didn't go with it. I didn't like Dragon Knight. So, what would work? So, and Dragon Knight, famously, like, the toys crashed and burned at the toy store, and the show was famously canceled one episode before it was finished. The last episode didn't make it to air, which is a really terrible thing to do if you're a network executive. You can spare that rerun of Recess for one more week, right? So, what would work? What would make for the perfect Kamen Rider to bring over to America? What would work on a toy front and a TV front? And I thought about this. I looked at all the possible options and this big like backlog of Kamen Riders that we have had since Kuga, and thought to myself, who would work? And ultimately, I settled on a few criterias, and one of them is, I have to admit, action figures are the king of toy sales in America. So it has to be something that is action figure friendly. It has to give us a lot of potential. 2, it can't be anything too odd. Like if they jump straight into like Gaim for action figure potential, you're asking kids to buy Samurai Fruit Men. And I don't think that's going to be a little bit of a hard sell, I feel. Because even in Japan, that felt a little bit weird. And then there is the Power Ranger factor. Whatever I was going to pick, I wanted to make sure it was someone that couldn't be mistaken for a Red Ranger. So that means, Den-O, Drive, all those that are just like primary red Kamen Riders, those were out. Even Kamen Rider Double kind of falls into that, because you look at Double, someone's going to say he's a Green Ranger. They're going to ignore the black part. Oh, a lot of Rangers have black in their costume. So, how do I solve all of that? Like, that was my 3-part criteria. So, what rider fits? Which one would I actually adapt for America? And the answer I came to, Kamen Rider O's. So you look at O's design, and what color ranger is he? Is he a red ranger because of the head? Is he a yellow ranger, a green ranger, a black ranger? You can't tell. He's too colorful. And the color is a little bit too sporadic and thin to really like pin him down as he is this primary color. So you get around the whole like he's a Power Ranger thing, because in the end he doesn't really look like a Power Ranger. He looks like he's from something else, which I think is a really important factor to kind of get away from that stigma. Now, of course, you're still gonna have to say, oh, it's a motorcycle helmet with a spandex costume. Yeah, it's a Power Ranger. But at the very least, you're going to minimize it. The other ones we were thinking of were action figure potential. And when it comes to O's, you got plenty to go around. You got all the different forms, and you could create a simple like peg and socket system to actually like connect his forms together and actually make all of his form changes work as a toy gimmick. And that would go over great in America. Like that's a kind of toy gimmick that, just sells more and more, because the more you buy, the more you can do with all of them. That kind of stuff, like we got that with Transformers Energon. Just eat it up, eat it up, eat it up. And then, of course, you have prominent monsters that you can make figures out of. You have Birth. You can have his forms as well. If we're talking larger toys, you can have... I can't even remember what it was called. And someone in the comments is going to correct me. Don't bother. You know what I'm talking about. But like the Scorpion mode for Birth's components. Claws. Got it. You can have that as a riding vehicle. They'd add a seat to it. So an action figure could ride it. And then, of course, the to-ride vendor, whatever a name it could be attached. So you've got larger toy options as well. And then, of course, plenty for roleplay. And what got me about O's is if they had done it like, let's say like 5 years ago, I think O's would have been perfect for a games to life function. Plug and play game, or hey, if you want to dump some real budget, an actual game on an actual console, I think you would have done big business on something like that. Just selling those, selling medals. And I was trying to figure out, like, how would you sell the medals? Because Super Megaforce showed us that you can get away with just selling the gimmick toys in America, like the Ranger keys. But, you could also pack them in with figures. That would make them pretty expensive, though. I think that would be, like, cost prohibitive to buy an action figure and the... and the medal at the same time. But that would be a way of getting, a few individual ones out while the roleplay toys carried all the others. Thinking about it more, you could probably get away with just selling them the way they did in Japan. Just like, here's a set of 3. But because they are, like NFC centric, you could do the exact same thing that like Skylanders did. Sell a scanner that is a plug and play video game or is a console game. You rest a medal on it and it switches his form in the game. Or you have like, you can do it like a parent. You can do it like a thing where like you have like an encyclopedia and it'll tell you about the medal origins, source of the animal it's based on, the powers it gives O's. All just like scanning it on the base. And you had a little bit of educational thing there with like, like if I'm scanning the hawk, here's a little bit about a hawk. So that, that makes the parent happy if there's an educational side to their toys. So we can account for that too. Now, when it comes to naming, of course, we can't call them Kamen Rider O's. I think enough time has passed that you could get away with calling him Masked Rider again. Toei, I'm not sure would ever want them to use that name again. But it's different people in charge. You could probably talk them into it. And it's a little bit easier to understand. So, what do we actually call him? So, the name in my head was Masked Rider Beast King. Or Masked Rider King of the Beasts. Something along that realm. That way his basic form is just called Masked Rider. He just has kind of like a moniker. And I like the idea of switching things up to have sayings and monikers rather than the songs and names that are just kind of like the animal names crammed together. I think it fit more of an American play style, and I think it'd be a little bit easier for American kids to understand. So, just for instance, I had, you'll excuse me, is like this is the part I actually like planned for. So when you have Masked Rider Beast King switching into his different forms, rather than announcing the animal, because let's face it, a kid isn't going to care about transforming into a grasshopper or an eel. You know, those are not cool animals for most kids. However, if we switch it up to not be named after, rather than being named after animals, we name them after their powers. Then you get something that sounds a little bit cooler. So instead of a song, and then like a song based on the name of the form, you have something more along the lines of like a wrestling entrance. So your Gatakiriba, your very first combo, would be Strength in Numbers Swarm form. And that would be comprised of the Thunder, Blade, and Jump medals. You know, for Latarata, you would have Thrill of the Hunt Predator form, made up of Shine, Claw, and Dash. For the Sagozo, Unrelenting Force Titan form, Horn, Strength, Gravity. And Tajadoru, the Immortal Flame Phoenix form, Sight, Wing, Talon. For Shouta, Danger of the Deep Tidal form, Sonar, Shock, Dive. And then for his ultimate form, and yes, I still count this as his ultimate form, Ancient Power Unleashed Jurassic form. Now Jurassic Park might take issue with that, but there's plenty of phrases out of dinosaurs that you could play with. Freeze, Armor, and I originally wrote it as Tail, but I think Force would be. It should probably change it to Force so it sounds cooler. And then because they'll be able to actually get it, Unbreakable Power Scale form. You need some original material, but hey, it sells another action figure and 3 more medals, right? Venom, Shield, and Bite. And then if we want to throw in Super Tato Ba, then it would be the announcement cry would be similar to his default cry. Instead, it would be the Ultimate Beast, Super Rider. So I accounted for how all of them would be named. If you're wondering about Birth, I mean, obviously we're not going to call him Birth. You know, he's definitely not going to have a Birth Buster as a weapon. So instead, no. I've named O's Masked Rider Beast King, which that would make Birth Masked Rider Machine King. So again, all mechanical sounds, synthetic voice for his belt, similarly, metal abilities based on named and based on the abilities they give him. Which I guess on Birth you could mostly just keep the names, couldn't you? Caterpillar Leg doesn't sound too cool, but we can fix that. He'd probably just call it Tank Treads or something. Henshin Cry, not Henshin. It's Masked Rider. So let's make the transformation cry Let's Ride. How hard is that to come up with? I started to come up with names for the main villains. I got a little bit distracted on those, honestly. I think Uva was the only one I came up with that I liked, which was Hive Mind. So it's a very Power Ranger-esque villain name, admittedly, but I don't think there's anything really wrong with that. Story-wise, I never really got into like how the characters would fit. Would Ankh be in there or anything like that? I think there would be something funny if this was kind of based on Power Rangers with a teenage cast. That way you could have a high school setting instead of like AG trying to do his odd jobs. So you'd get Ankh, this, ancient creature, that's trying to mimic emotions and humanity, being forced to go through high school, which would lead to some hilarity. And, that's definitely going to give you your morals of the day if we're making this a kids show, because obviously we're selling toys, so it's going to be a kids show. Can't really avoid that. Beyond that, I think everything else kind of says itself. You know, you sell the metal, you use the games to life format to sell the medals. Medals work in the toys. You basically just import the Japanese stuff over and make it work the same way. And yeah, that's what I think would be like the choice Kamen Rider to do here in America. Now, I don't think it's going to be hard. I don't think we're ever going to see an adapted Kamen Rider in America again. I think from here on out, this, especially because Power Rangers is not nearly the juggernaut it used to be. No one's, no one's looking to copy the formula left and right. I think from here on out, it's going to be the actual Japanese series imported. Shout Factory doing 01, for instance. I think that's going to be it from here on out. That's probably not going to lead to toys at Walmart of Kamen Rider, but for now, I'll accept that. And if we ever do get something adapted into a actual TV show for the networks again, maybe some of this makes it, maybe not. Maybe they have a completely different idea and a completely different writer in mind. But hey, at least if this is the route they go, my thoughts are out in the universe and I can say they ripped me off. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.